Good evening. It is just after 7 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of November. This is a regular meeting of the Richfield Board of Education. In attendance this evening are Tim Paulus, John Ashmead, Christine Malik, I'm Peter Tensing, and Superintendent Steve Yanowski. Todd Nolenberger and Deb Etchen have both let us know that they have other commitments, unfortunately. I want to remind everyone to take a look at the top of the agenda where we see our Richfield Public Schools mission to inspire and empower each individual to learn, grow, and excel. And so this is the old centering moment. It's just like meditation, right? Where we're going to center ourselves and focus in on what our mission is. I'm looking forward, of course, to some presentations from district staff about our strategic planning update and a number of other important topics this evening. I would ask any board member who is prepared to make a motion on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion by Paula, second by Malik. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The agenda is approved. We can go ahead and move on to item 3. I'm sorry. We are going to go ahead and move on to our presentation from Lisa Ron, our Director of Community Education.
And as we do every other month, we are hosted by some of our programs and departments, and Lisa Ron is in charge of our community education, our early childhood, and has some pretty exciting and important information to share with us about community ed. So Lisa.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the school board for allowing me to present tonight. Again, I'm Lisa Ron, Community Education Supervisor, and I'm here tonight to let you know what kind of programs, services, and opportunities that we have through Richfield Community Education, and to maybe give you a better understanding of what falls underneath that umbrella. Our mission through community education, we follow the school district mission, of course, but also we like to bring together school and community services to meet each individual unique needs by facilitating development of lifelong learning. And some people call it birth to grave, some people call it 0 to 99, but we offer classes literally from 0 to whatever age you'd like. So you'll have an opportunity to see what some of those might be. We like to encourage citizen involvement and participation in education and community development, and building partnerships and promoting maximum cooperation, coordination of programs, services, and resources. And you'll learn a little bit more about that as we move forward in the presentation as well. So tonight I would like to provide you the opportunity to see a little bit about our programs, services, and some data behind that. As you can see, community education is at the top there, and underneath our umbrella of community education, you can see all of the different types of programs that come out of our office. The ones that have the asterisks, they indicate that that is a collaboration with Bloomington. So a lot of our programs are collaborations. So that'll give you a better idea of what we do with Bloomington and then what we do completely on our own. In case you don't know, our office is over at Central Education Center, just across the parking lot. And come and see us at any time. We're a very small office of 3 people, but we have outstanding programs that come out of that little office. So the most popular program and the program that most people identify community education with is this catalog. And so I'm sure that many of you, if you live in Richfield or even Bloomington, you've received this catalog in the mail. It does go out to 60,000 homes and businesses between the 2 communities. It's called Adult Enrichment. Most people don't know it's Adult Enrichment, but these are the classes for adults in the evening. We also have other advertisement in this catalog, but that's the most popular one that people know about. And those classes in there include classes in art, business and career development, technology, dance and music, fitness, wellness classes, hobbies and special interests, home improvement, world languages. So we just offer a huge variety of activities. There's over 150 choices there, and we offer that 3 times a year. One of the things that I'm really excited about this past fall was that we had the opportunity to partner with Bloomington Public Health and offer Zumba classes to Somali women. And the reason that we were doing that separate was because Bloomington Public Health received a grant and wanted to work with us, and I'm a coordinator of programs, so I have the opportunity to find instructors and reserve the space. And because of the culture, there's some privacy issues that they need to have while they're doing classes such as fitness. And so we were able to collaborate that this past fall. We had about 8 participants, and we'll look on to the future to see what else we can offer to meet the community's needs. So you can see some of the enrollment numbers here. I just pulled data from 2 years, 1,300 in 13-14 and about 1,100 in 14-15. And then down at the bottom, this program is a collaboration with Bloomington. So we do have data on both when you combine them together. It's typically, what you'll see is that Richfield is about 1/3 to Bloomington's 2/3. And it is also the same way in the population between Richfield and Bloomington. So it's usually typically 1/3 to 2/3. Occasionally you'll see our data with enrollments going down. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. There's sometimes some reasons behind that. Economy is the biggest reason. If the economy isn't doing very well, unfortunately, these classes are considered extras for most people, and those types of things need to be in the budget cut area, so we will see a decline in enrollment. And another thing where we see a decline is when we lose an instructor. And I have had some instructors that have taught for me for over 25 years. And it's amazing, and they get such a following. And unfortunately, I've had 3 instructors retire last year. And just to give you an example, a Zumba instructor teaches 20 to 30 people 4 times a year. And when she leaves, the people that would follow her typically will leave as well, and then I have to build up that enrollment again. So that can be a loss of 100 people right there. So it gives you a little example of what can happen. This fall, our enrollments are on the rise a little bit. So we also offer youth enrichment opportunities. This is an example of the catalog that goes out to all of the elementary schools, and this is in English as well as Spanish. And these classes are directly after school. The kids can stay at school and they can take things like karate, drawing, science, basketball, things like that, and stay right at school, and then their parents can pick them up, or if they go to Fun Club, they just walk to Fun Club when they're done. Drama Kids is one of our most popular right now after school, and if you're a parent of an elementary student, you might know about that. After they're done with their class, they put on a performance where they invite the parents to come in, and that has been a very popular class for us this past fall as well as last year. So we also have sports camps, summer activities. When targeted services is done in July, then Community Ed will pick up and offer some summer activities for the elementary age students so that they have something else to do for the summer. Community education also helps with targeted services, so we provide our youth coordinator the support and services that she can help with during that summer program. And an example of that is she has coordinated some of the high school volunteers. That is one of our goals this year, is to get more active in recruiting some opportunities for the high school students to have some youth service hours within Community Ed and also outside of Community Ed. But some of the things that we have helped with are the Wellness Expo. We've had middle school and high school students volunteer for that. And then on our field trips that we take during the summer, we have had high school volunteers come in and help supervise the children, and again at the targeted services. And you can see our participation numbers in youth are going up. So that is a good sign that economy is recovering a little bit and people are interested in having their kiddos do some fun activities after school. One of our things that we pride ourselves in is our collaborations, and we do collaborate with the city of Richfield on several programs. Some of those are Wiggles and Giggles preschool program that is offered 3 days a week in the mornings over at Central. We collaborate on summer trips, and to give you an example of some of the summer trips, we have gone to Eric's Ranch, and that's a ranch in Eagan. It's a horse riding ranch that is run by adults with autism, and they teach the kids how to take care of and how to ride a horse, and that's one of the most favorite trips of the kids. And these field trips will go elementary through middle school age. We also took a trip to the Mississippi headwaters, and I know that sounds crazy because we live in Richfield, but we took a coach bus, and we left at 7 in the morning, and we brought kids all the way to the headwaters with a few stops along the way, and they got home at midnight. And a lot of these kids might not have had the opportunity to do that type of field trip, and they were able to do that with Community Ed at a low cost. And some of the parents asked to go with because they had never been there as well. So we did provide that opportunity for the parents to come chaperone. Another really popular one is our Home Alone Safety, and that we collaborate with the City of Richfield as well as the police department. And that teaches kids who are 10 years old and older to safely stay home alone, and it gives them opportunities to learn how to use first aid, how to what to do in an emergency situation, how to cook healthy snacks, things like that. So that's a super popular class for us as well. It's offered about 4 times a year, fills every single time. There's some pictures of some of the kids in our activities. There's rock climbing and a Lego building class, and then a little preschool class. Another thing we offer is driver's education. I don't know if any of you guys have had our driver's ed classes, but we've had 126 kids participate last year. This is a picture of the class that just ended last Thursday. Had 30 kids in there, so watch out, they're all getting their permit. So they'll be on the roads very soon. But we offer behind the wheel, classroom, and then we even offer adult behind the wheel programs. And the classes are now located over at Central across the parking lot, so the kids can just walk over there after school. We also have aquatics, and aquatics is a collaboration with Bloomington in the school year, and then we pull out of that collaboration and offer our own program in Richfield during the summer, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But we offer swimming lessons from infant to adult. We have open and lap swim, water fitness classes, and we also, again, this is another opportunity we had with Bloomington Public Health, where right now, currently, we are offering swimming lessons to Somali girls, and that's the same thing, trying to respect the culture and the privacy that's needed for things like swimming lessons, and offering that at a time where the pool is not busy and where we can get the kids in there to learn to swim. So we continue to try to look at different ways to offer things that help meet our community needs. Our participation numbers, about 176 during the school year and 713 in the summer. And you might think, wow, what's the difference between those two numbers? During the school year, we're very limited on the time that we can offer swimming lessons because we have to share the pool. When Richfield went down to one pool, it eliminated opportunity to offer more lessons, and so we get lessons 2 days a week. And so we squeeze in what we can during the 2 days a week. And so our enrollment numbers tend to stay about that 175 to 200 mark. It's also been increasingly more difficult to find swim instructors. So if you have anybody you know who can teach swimming lessons, send them my way. We have a lot of kids that haven't gone on to get their lifeguarding skills and their WSIs. So in the summer, that program, some of you might be familiar with it, it's called Olympic Style Swim, and it used to be run by Mark Hamron, who was an icon here and still is for swimming in Richfield. But currently it is now run by Amy Knutson, and she is also a coach for swimming, and she maintained our enrollments, and we had 713 last year in our swim program for summer. Another program that's under our Community Ed umbrella is Metro South ABE. And this program it's a consortium. And when I say a consortium, it is run for 4 districts. So it's between Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Edina, and Richfield. And the classes are that are included under there are the Under 21 Diploma Program, the Adult Diploma Program, GED, Basic Skills, and English as a Second Language. And to give you an idea of participation numbers, we had about 544 Richfield residents participate in 2014-15 in the ABE program. So that would be the Adult Diploma, GED, Basic Skills, and ESL. And in the Under 21 program, we had 18 students. So that makes up about 20% of the participation numbers in the program. So you have to keep in mind the program has the 4 districts, but they also get people who come in and participate from other cities. So 26% of the participants are from other cities, and then it goes from there. 20% are from Richfield. So if you need further information on Metro South ABE and all of its programs, I talked to the director today, and she's more than willing to come and present, or you can send me some questions and I can help you find out more about that program as well. We also have
Excuse me,
learning.
Lisa?
Yes.
How does that program advertise? Do you know how they find their students or what they do for outreach?
Yes. Well, a lot of it is word of mouth for them because the students and the participants spread the word that the consortium is there, but it's advertised in this catalog, which goes out to all 4 districts. You know, that each district has their own catalog, and there's an ad in here. We also have information available in all of the community education offices. So over at Central, we have ESL classes that collaborate with Mira, and then we have all the information. So if people come in and ask for it, we're able to hand them right away the information on the classes and where they can get it.
Okay.
So,
All right, thanks.
yep. Another program is called the Learning Exchange, and that's for adults with disabilities who are 18 plus. And that is also a collaboration of the 4 districts. And those classes are similar to the adult enrichment classes, where they are cooking classes. They have classes on living independently, things like that for the adults who have disabilities. And their participation numbers are about 733 total between all of the districts. And of that total, Richfield has about 25% of those enrollments. There tends to be a lot more group homes in Richfield, so Richfield gets a pretty high number of participation in this program. And there's lots of opportunities to volunteer if you ever want to see this program in action and volunteer. It's an amazing program, and the adults that participate in it are so happy to be having that help, to be able to learn different skills and to be able to participate in classes like that. So. And then we have our early childhood family education, and we all know that preschool is kind of a hot topic right now for all districts. In Richfield, we collaborate with Bloomington, and it's our early childhood family education program, or some of you might know it as the early childhood services program. And the types of classes that we offer are parents and infants, toddler togetherness, Bright Beginnings, which is for 3-year-olds, Kids Count, which is for 4-year-olds, and then the Kinder Prep program is a preschool program for 4-year-olds who are at risk for not succeeding in school. And so that particular program is one of our most popular programs. We have classes for that program at Centennial, Sheridan Hills, and this year as a new program at Richfield STEM. And that program serves quite a few students within the 3 schools, and that is completely free for the families that participate, and it also includes transportation. So that's one of the classrooms at STEM. We've had a total of 166 participants in the school readiness classes, and that includes all of the Kinder Prep, Kids Count, and Bright Beginnings, and those are Richfield numbers. The neat thing about that is that the Kids Count, Kinder Prep, and Bright Beginnings all have inclusion with our early childhood special ed. So all of those programs work cooperatively with our special ed department over at Central. We've had 456 kids screened last year, and you can see the breakdown between 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. Our goal, however, is to get more 3-year-olds and more 4-year-olds, because by the time they're 5, we don't have the opportunity to be able to catch any needs that they might have. So it's a big push for Richfield and also for Bloomington to get those kids screened by age 3. We also had 134 families participate in family education, and when I say family education, that has the parent component in it. So there's parent education along with the preschool education. And that's not to say that that's not in the other classes, but there's more opportunities for parent involvement in the family education classes. And then there's a family literacy program that has 13 Richfield families. And family literacy is a program that meets 3 days a week that has childcare for the smaller kids, preschool for the younger kids, ESL and GED programs for the adults, all in one program. And so we have 13 Richfield families who participate in that.
Excuse me, Lisa. Can I ask about the kinder prep? Has kinder prep, like the impact on the ECFE classes, right? So before kinder prep, hopefully we've caught some of those kids in the ECFE
Right.
program. But how many, what do you think that, do you have a measure of the growth of number of kids within those programs on a combined basis from ECFE to ECFE for kinder prep?
How many kids?
Yeah, so like a few years ago before we had kinder prep,
Right.
we just had ECFE as an offering, it seems like, and so now we have that and kinder prep. Has that been significant growth in
Yes.
number of kids participating?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, we are full on all of the classes, and about this time of year, we start getting a wait list. And so our hope is to increase the number of kinder prep classes or those type of classes within Richfield.
And it hasn't harmed the enrollment all that much
For
at ECFE?
ECFE, no, or
Okay.
ECSE, no.
Okay.
And actually, what happens is some of those children are identified in kinder prep as ECSE that haven't been identified before, so then they actually get extra services that they might not have received if they weren't in kinder prep.
Okay, thanks.
So, for Bloomington and Richfield, Richfield has really taken the time this past year and a half to talk about and have lots of meetings with Bloomington about what our needs are here in Richfield specifically. And so we are continuing on with that. We have some demographics that might look different than Bloomington and some needs that might look different. And because we're a collaboration, we work with them, but we also have some of our own unique needs. So we're continually meeting to make sure that the needs of Richfield are getting met. And we'll continue to be doing that this upcoming year. And you can see some of our goals here are to make sure that all students are ready for kindergarten, and not all students participate in a family center program. So that means we kind of look outside of just family center, and we're looking at how can we get even some of those children that are in the preschools or the daycares within Richfield. Even if it's just getting them information on what they need to know by kindergarten. So that's one of our goals, to serve more students, of course, and to have more children screened by age 3, which I just talked about, and then also to promote our schools within those preschoolers. And you know, we want to gain those kids. We don't want them to go somewhere else, so we're going to start trying to hit them at that preschool level, and so we've got some plans in place to do that as well. Any questions?
Yes, you've stimulated a question, basically relative to the numbers. So we had 166 participating in the ECFE classes in 14-15. We know we're generally enrolling somewhere north of 400 kids in a kindergarten class recently. Knowing, of course, as you mentioned, that there are other ways that children can have pre-K education besides our offering, do we have any sense of what percentage of our kindergartners are showing up in what we would consider to be an unprepared state? So basically, how big of a mountain, or how big of a hill, I guess, do we have to climb in order to meet our goal of having all children prepared for kindergarten?
So one of the areas this partnership is advancing us in is that Bloomington has consistently assessed their kindergartners upon entry, and we had not previously been utilizing that practice fully with our kindergartners as an assessment. And so this year we've implemented the full kindergarten assessment, and so which assesses students early on in their kindergarten year to tell us where they are in terms of kindergarten readiness. And so we are beginning that process with this calendar year, or with this school year, and we'll continue to track that data, so we'll be better able to report that as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, so that'll be a metric for us to kind of keep an eye on then over time, and once we can have an idea of what the quantity of unprepared children is, then we can start strategizing how we're going to reach those kids.
Absolutely,
And,
yep.
yeah,
And we have a little bit of an
proactive
idea with
with
the
that.
Bloomington data and working too with, there's a lot of what they call friends and family daycare. And so even looking at how do we reach those folks who are not enrolled somewhere, but the family or the friends are taking care of the kids and giving them the resources that they need to help get the kids ready for kindergarten.
Excellent.
I wasn't sure which program you were talking about, but you provide transportation for some kids. Which program was that in youth busing?
Yep, that's a kinder prep program.
Okay.
So free busing is provided for that particular program, and that's to and from school. At Sheridan and at our STEM, they take the bus with the other kids in the morning, and then they take a separate bus home, because they only are half day. So,
I'm trying to recall, Steve, with the last legislative session, did they end up passing the lesser version of the 4-year-old? I don't think that anything passed on
No,
that.
they have not at present, and they held on to the money. So at present, within our strategic plan, and we'll talk briefly about that with regard to our strategic actions for us to discuss and begin to prioritize, we're actually committing more dollars and resources to our pre-K program and transportation than we receive from the state of Minnesota at this time. The state is looking at providing universal pre-K, but haven't made a decision down that road, and they're also looking at possibly connecting free pre-K to poverty levels across the state of Minnesota. But again, they haven't made that decision yet either. It's high on Governor Dayton's agenda, but that obviously is a significant conflict within the legislature.
Right. So anyway, probably another point for us to bring up. I know we mentioned this in our prioritization as we think about how we advocate with our legislators. This is probably an area where we can try
absolutely.
and exert some advocacy. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Lisa. Very good. We'll move on to the next item, which is going to be our superintendent goals update from Superintendent Yanowski.
All right, so as guided by our previous conversation, I will begin with a second report. So my initial report was in August, setting goals for a data perspective for the year to help guide both my evaluation and the performance part of my leadership process. If you recall, and this is the process followed by all leaders within Richfield Public Schools, so everyone within management team, all of our principals, all of our directors, are guided by the same process. 35% of performance formula for leadership and performance has to do with student achievement or specific student achievement-based goals. 35% of those are process goals, or the things that we put in place to guide and improve student achievement. And then 30% is a specific individual performance, guided by the evaluation, by feedback, and by how that person is performing from that evaluative rubric. Broken down to separate out, setting 3 achievement goals within my evaluation, 7 process or for our district goals, and then the final evaluation, the summary, with my goals reviewed quarterly. Achievement-based goals. So at this point, just reminding us of the baselines. We're talking about increasing our graduation rate by 3%. We increased by over 5% last year, and our current high school grad rate is 81.4%, and as published in the papers, is above the state of Minnesota average for the first time in over 10 years. Increasing proficiency across our district as measured by the MCA, 3% or more in math. Current rate across the district, 44.4% proficiency. And then improving rate as measured by the MCA by 3% or more in reading, and our current rate across the district is 42.8% of our students at standard. Process goals. These are the things, just reminding us, these are the things that our leaders are implementing to try to ensure accelerated achievement for all of our students. One has to do with implementing the Danielson evaluation. So this year we moved to a national evaluation model that supports with feedback and professional development for all of our licensed staff. Baseline data, we have 371 licensed teachers in Richfield Public Schools, which would constitute 1,113 evaluations being completed by both our QComp evaluators, but also our administrators. At present, we are already at 241 completed for a 22% rate, and will come to a point where obviously we get to 100% by the end of the year, so we are on target. We are continuing our professional learning communities, which is our teams of teachers getting together to plan curriculum and also look at and align student data. Moving from 68 teams last year, we have 77 teams meeting weekly within or just outside of the school day. We also have instructional training occurring throughout the organization to ensure that our PLCs and professional learning communities are remaining focused and continuing on in the correct direction. 3, increasing our integrated services. So we began our programming with our ELL and our special ed work. Last year, we increased significantly with our end-of-year numbers, served in the classroom 1,030 students out of 1,264 ELL students, and special ed students, 134 out of our 715 students. We guide that based on our student needs, and our students, for our ability to close the achievement gap, must always be exposed to grade-level curriculum before they are accelerated or before they're supported in catching up, and that begins within the classroom. Number 4, creating a communication feedback plan for myself, and this is one of my own personal goals with our staff. I held my first feedback session with Education Richfield just last week. Have a set of things that I listen to and will be responding to, and have a second session scheduled to work with Ed Richfield. There used to be a superintendent teacher advisory committee, but the level of attendance didn't match what is present at an Education Richfield meeting. And so in working with Ed Richfield leadership, we decided this would be an effective way to begin gathering voice in a more strategic, systemic way. Number 5, create and implement staff, parent, and community surveys. So we began a process with a superintendent survey last year. Surveys are now in development for other members of our leadership team and our principals to gather feedback on our schools, and also in regard to gathering feedback on our principals to determine how they're performing. Number 6, publish and launch a strategic plan, including timelines and responsibility structures. So you're going to see an initial presentation tonight with the main strategic actions that we'll be encouraging and moving on with this year. An update tonight, and we won't go through the full spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet we're working on has to do with timelines, who is specifically responsible, and the specific actions that we'll be taking as a district and as a community. And finally, the last process goal was overseeing effective referendum communications, including many community meetings that were held, mailings and documentation sent, completing all documentation with the state and with the county, and ensuring that we review our communications effort and completing them. Finally, there will be my overall evaluation, which includes several components. One is a quarterly review of goals and progress, so that update I'm providing you today. Survey feedback from constituents. So similar to last year, I sent out a survey to constituents. I'll be doing that again this year and reporting back to the board and community the feedback received. Feedback session with school board members. As you recall, we did that last year, and we'll be doing that again at the end of this school year, and then completing a final summary evaluation to overall analyze my performance. And those will go into my full evaluation and also performance review. Questions?
Questions for Mr. Yanowski regarding his updated goals for the 15-16 school year?
You mentioned earlier, I have a question, the parent community surveys. Do we still do the SPAC, the Superintendent Parent Advisory Committee?
That had typically been attended by between 1 and 3 people, and so we partnered that with the strategic planning work last year, trying to hold more community sessions, and so we're trying to find more effective ways to gather parent input rather than an extremely, honestly, sparsely attended evening.
Steve, one question that I have for you, looking at as we're, and this is just sort of more of a kind of general question, not with any specific feedback on the 15-16 goals. As we're seeing great progress with the graduation rate, one would anticipate that as you get closer to 100%, your ability to incrementally move that bar becomes more difficult as we get closer to that level. So wanting to both hold ourselves to a high level of accountability, but also have a realistic expectation, how would you see that goal sort of evolving over time?
So first I will say I look forward with positive feelings and anticipation to the time where graduation rate isn't on my overall goals. And so when we get above the 95th percentile, I would certainly see myself focusing greater percentages and greater focus in other areas. Obviously, there's a multitude of student achievement-based measures we can utilize. We could utilize MCA, moving more students to exceeds from meets. Once our achievement jumps in those areas, we can move my student achievement-based goals to the number of credits our students achieve in our college and the high school-based programs. We can move some of my student achievement-based goals to ACT-based performance. And so as we begin to get some of those, what I would consider more basic measures, which is graduation rate and the MCA, up to where I would strategically want to see them, we can continue to expand my student achievement-based goals into some of those other areas that are more ambitious.
So I guess what I'm hearing from you, and this is something for board members to kind of keep in mind as we evaluate future superintendent goals, is that we want to be sure that we're modifying those goals to keep them both realistic, but also meaningful in terms of making really meaningful improvement with, with instructional and achievement improvement. So thank you for that feedback. Other questions from board members?
I have one more. On the achievement goal for the MCA scores, why is math weighted more than reading?
So within the weighting of the performance award, we can make determinations of where the largest focus is. Frankly, when we began, we did a lot of work with pre-assessments and post-assessments in math, and we have teachers who are at a place where they are actually launching them this year. So if you think about the idea of a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, within our elementary schools right now, a significant, not all, a significant group of our population are actually assessing prior to teaching to see where students are, and then they're changing their teaching based on the data that they have found. Getting that across reading has been a more complicated process and has taken longer. And so as we continue down that road and we continue to accelerate all of our student learning, you'll see some of those flipping and having a greater focus on reading as we continue the progress.
Thanks.
All right. Very good. We will move on to the next part of our agenda, which has to do with updating our strategic plan. There it is, a two-part presentation. Right now we welcome Ms. Tia Clausen, who is our...
No.
I've got it wrong.
Nope, I'm going to continue on, and Tia, you can go back to just the one page right there. Yep, that would be the page. So we've provided in the board pack a pretty significant spreadsheet, but also a one-pager with the major strategic actions that are in progress for the course of this year. And our font looks a little bit small. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about strategic planning, the process that we went through last year, and then also some of the pieces on this page. And what I want us to focus on with regard to this page are some of the things that are going to be our large conversations this year. There are many specific actions that will go into our strategic plan, but we really want to focus on the things that are going to have broader-based community engagement. They may have significant budgetary or financial impacts, but they are the large conversations for us to engage in as a staff, and we're going to begin a couple of those tonight when Principal Latanya Daniels from the high school begins a conversation with us around high school scheduling and graduation supports, and with Tia Clausen as we talked about gifted and talented services and talent development. As we look at our strategic plan, if we recall, we made a very significant effort to work with our community and with our staff and with our students to create a plan which has actions to implement over the next 5 years. On the attached spreadsheet, you'll find we're beginning to place people responsible for each set of actions, or who is the point person for each of our actions. And then we're also beginning to implement a timeline, because as you do a 5-year strategic plan, you can't obviously do all of the actions in the first year. And even in the things that you want to work on, those are things that, dependent on funding, dependent on the system's ability to make transitions, those may be moved into the future as we continue to try to implement our strategic plan effectively. Some of the things that we are really working on this year, and they're things that will be coming in and out of board agendas for us to have larger conversations. Strategy 1 will be providing a challenging, relevant, and engaging educational opportunities for all students that will increase learning across our system. So starting with our high school has developed a task force, and they will be reviewing as a group graduation requirements. They'll be looking at surrounding districts. They'll be working on increasing that college exposure opportunities, along with making sure that we maintain and continue our college in the schools and AP courses, and ideally expanding them. And Principal Daniels is going to have a conversation around how the tool of a schedule has the ability to perhaps support that in a significant way that our current 6-period day may not have the ability to do that. At the middle school, we're looking at multiple pathways for acceleration. Right now, we're working on our honors classes within the middle school, trying to figure out how to add more students to honors and doing things non-traditionally in an honors way. And what that means non-traditionally is identifying more students who want to be in honors classes and then providing additional supports for them to make it and to be able to accelerate their learning. So as we think about a tiered support class, we often think about a student who is behind grade level who needs that to advance to get themselves up to grade level. We're trying to flip that continuum to think about support classes can also be ways for students who want to be in honors to get double exposure to math, for example, and that's the area we're working on right now to allow them to accelerate their learning and remain on pace with honors where they might have been challenged with just 1 hour a day of the honors coursework. Similarly, we're looking at and beginning a conversation around the expansion of STEM courses. And as our STEM program continues to grow and expand up through 5th grade, the question becomes, how do we and what will be the way that we expand our STEM program through our middle school and then on to our high school? And that conversation is beginning at the middle school. And then how do we develop more courses to prepare for the high school pathways? Because as we do our 6-12 continuum, and as the high school looks at creating multiple pathways to get students ready for career, college, and future, our role in middle school is to deliberately select courses, electives, and options to prepare them for those pathways. And finally, at the elementary school, increasing our talent development, aligning our work to our core classrooms. So we're really working to strategically accelerate students in core subject areas to advance their learning and advance their ability to extend beyond standard. And then finding ways to increase funding and support for early childhood as we work to write additional grants and advocate with the state of Minnesota to help us provide more funding for early childhood. Moving on, strategy 2, creating outreach and marketing, and we're working on transition events for each grade level with a specific focus on kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th as students move from one school to the other, and creating new marketing materials and improved branding. So you'll see more handouts, more flyers, and more mailings that look similar to what we have up on the thank you, blanking, that was awkward, up on the screen. And as we continue to create those and utilize them for more effective communications, ironic to lose a word when I'm talking about communications. I will provide a welcoming, healthy, supportive, safe, and caring environment. We're really working to create a plan for our outreach workers and our social workers so that outreach workers have the same job across all of our buildings so that we're not just appealing to one set of the population, but all of our populations. And then this year, we've already created and launched an implementation of full breakfast or free breakfast for all our students, including kiosks in most of our schools, which allows our students to get freer and more easy access to breakfast throughout the building, expanding the number of students who are eating healthy foods during the day through our fruit and vegetable grant, which has been almost $150,000 worth of fruits and vegetables to our students. Finally, acquiring and aligning human, financial, operation, and technology resources to maximize our goals. We have created and launched a partnership for teacher placement and development with 7 private colleges and the University of Minnesota, systematizing the way we use our student teachers, but also allowing us a pipeline to the best and the brightest earlier than most of our other neighboring districts. Also ensuring with our systemic evaluation process that all of our staff receive feedback, evaluations, and professional learning across the curriculum. Operations, Chief Holge and his team are working on a long-range facilities improvement plan because while we have exceptional buildings, we also need to acknowledge that. Those buildings are 40 to 50 years old, and as with people's homes, we need to continue to upgrade and maintain to make sure that our exceptional buildings remain in a high level of repair and remain effective to meet our students' needs. And then we're also working to analyze financial methods, budgeting models, and projections to make sure that our projections are accurate, but also looking at financial models to make sure that we can do things like we did this year, so that if our projections come up short, we have ways to find additional funding to close that financial gap. And finally, as a district, we're developing and implementing feedback surveys for the community to try to get a better voice on how are we doing, where do we need to focus, and what are the things that we need to do better. Attached spreadsheet, I'm just going to focus quickly on the header but not go into it. And so you'll see across the left are 4 strategy areas I talked a little bit about. Within each, there are actions and then specific activities. We've already worked as a management team, but then principals are beginning conversations with their staff over the coming months to talk about whether or not these are appropriate activities for 15, 16, or 16, 17, and beyond. And then we're also taking notes on each of those areas if there are specific comments to help guide our future work and help us understand better how we accomplish our strategic activities. With that, I'll take a pause and let people soak in all that information and open up for questions.
Questions for Mr. Yanowski around the strategic plan?
So I really, really like that spreadsheet. I'm just looking for maybe something, an addition of like the financial aspects that go along with a lot of the things that are in there, so we can prioritize from that perspective too.
Can you give a little bit more clarity on what you mean by financial aspects?
So how much is this gonna cost? So
Yeah, that's what I was
you've got
thinking.
this, and this is what we're gonna do, and here's who's gonna do it, and maybe how we're gonna pay it, or where the money's gonna come from.
That's a great question, as we obviously have just completed a referendum campaign. And as we work with our taxpayers to be transparent with the community about what we're spending our money on and making sure that we do spend our money on our top priorities. You know, one great example, and we'll begin this as a larger conversation this evening, so Principal Daniels will be talking about a 7-period day. There is a significant financial impact to that. And so one of the conversations for us to guide as a superintendent and school board is begin having a conversation about what are our top priorities and what areas are we willing to reduce our funds, what areas are we willing to expand our funds, and what are the things strategically that if we aren't able to implement, should we try to figure out more creative ways to find new funds.
So not to make a spreadsheet that needs to go on a legal landscape paper. The other data point that I guess I'd be interested in seeing is how we intend to measure success with these particular initiatives.
So I'm hearing an addition of box of financial implications, and then also measurement. And we had measurement on the initial spreadsheet, so just so you know, we have some of that work. I think you've already actually seen that, so funny. We've had some of that work, but we haven't been able to create logical measurements for each of those areas. And so we didn't want to lay all of that out at this time, but we will continue to work on that. And the goal for this year is to obviously have people responsible and timelines completed during the course of this year. And most of that will also include how will we propose to measure that and what will be the financial impact, or at least getting a greater understanding of the financial impact of each of these areas.
Other feedback around the strategic plan? Yeah.
I have a question. So the strategies, the spreadsheet has the columns are strategies, actions, activities, responsible party, and then timing, and some notes. What was the specific guidance and output from the group that put together the strategic plan? I'm assuming the strategies are direct output, but there's a point at which this was
Right.
handed off, correct?
Correct. All right. So between the strategic planning team, they worked through the strategies, actions, and activities. And as a board, the board's role as a governing body is to help advise the superintendent and district management team to continue on down the road, or if there are concerns about certain areas, provide that overall vision, guidance, and feedback. So with that, with the strategies, actions, and activities, we took that to management team to begin outlining responsible parties. So approximately 25 of us got together, began working those pieces out. And then, depending on where we were in that process, some conversations have gone to buildings and leadership teams to begin determining, is it a 15-16 conversation, is it a 16-17 and beyond, and what will that look like?
Thanks.
Not a question, but a comment. I'm real happy to see strategy 2. I am concerned about maintaining and increasing our market share. And that addresses that directly, which is good, because we've got to keep the kids we've got and bring new ones in.
So, and I would share that concern, and as we think as a board, it's important for us as a team to remember that with the significant upgrade of the Crossroads concierge apartments on Penn, we're looking at 142 of our students most likely not living in our community next year. As we've looked at one-bedroom apartments only allowing for 2 people to live in an apartment, and obviously apartment managers get to make determinations that really aren't impacted by the school board or the superintendent. We are pleased that they worked with the tenants, with students, to allow them to find ways without applying to make it through our school year, so our students didn't have to have a a transition in the middle of their school year. But if we are being objective, it's going to certainly impact our larger term projection for our enrollment for next year. And then we also will be paying specific attention to the birth rate, which actually was slightly down over the next several years. And so we're going to have to be quite aggressive in our marketing and communications and outreach to make sure that we continue to increase market share, because we're going to have to grab more of the students from basically less of the population.
Other comments or observations? Hearing none, we can move forward.
All right, so I am proud and excited to introduce Principal Latanya Daniels from our high school. And she is here to have a conversation, and how I want to frame this conversation is as follows. As we go down the strategic planning work and we begin to look at things to implement that will significantly improve our district, they begin with conversations about the large pieces. The 7-period day in the high school is one of those pieces. She's going to share some of that information, and our larger conversation is around understanding the implications of the 7-period day, and then beginning a conversation for us in terms of priorities and how are we going to longer term make some difficult decisions about top priorities for our district. Ms. Daniels.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I would like to thank the board for giving me this opportunity to present this information or this proposal around Richfield High School moving eventually to a 7-period day. So by the conclusion of this presentation, I would like each board member to have a clear understanding of Richfield High School's current academic reality, and also understand how a 7-period day schedule can help improve our academic reality and allow all of our Richfield High School learners to achieve the mission and prepare for life beyond high school. The road to this proposal did not begin with me becoming the principal of Richfield High School. This work in exploring schedules that would create and generate different options or optimize the options for our students at Richfield High School started several years ago. During the 2011-12 school year, there was a task force created to explore different schedules that would allow students room in their schedules to take more classes. In 2014-15, another task force was created for the high school to explore 3 different schedules: a 7-period day schedule, an 8-period day schedule, and also a 5-period day schedule on a trimester. And this school year, when I began the principalship here at Richfield High School, I proposed to our staff, and I'm now proposing to you, the 7-period day option for Richfield High School. Our current reality at Richfield is that if you look at these tables here or graphs, you see that in math and reading in the 10th grade as well as math in the 11th grade, we are consistently scoring below the state. And actually in 2015 in reading, we landed at about 36% of our students reading at standards level, and about 28% of our students in the 11th grade performing at standards level in math. Also, you will see our multiple measures rating here. And multiple measures rating is the measure of how well Minnesota's schools are performing under the Minnesota State waiver under No Child Left Behind. And if you look at this bar graph here, you see where we are. We have 4 domains in which we are being measured: the proficiency domain, growth domain, as well as our ability to close the achievement gap and graduation rate. Last year, we received all of our points, 25 points, for the work that you all did last year, RHS did last year, and having a graduation rate of 81%. But you see that we have room to grow under growth, as well as closing the achievement gap. And our greatest opportunity for growth is right there at proficiency. So there are 3 big buckets that I want to share with you around why a 7-period day would provide the structure for us at Richfield High School to accelerate learning for all students. And the first bucket is to learn and increase academic achievement. For students, there would be additional time, an additional class period in the day. And I want to be clear that it's not time alone that will accelerate achievement. It's the quality of which you do with that time. So is what you do with that time is how we maximize that time. And so in this particular case, when we say additional time for learning, we have so many opportunities to introduce courses that will accelerate achievement, and the 7-period day schedule allows for all learners to be hit. So I'm sitting across the room from some of our highest performing students at Richfield High School. And so they're high-flying students, and so the different courses that we can offer for those type students are more dual enrollment courses, or courses in which our students can earn college credits, more college credits. Then we have this middle group of students in which we want to accelerate, in which we want to bump up to take more college courses, and those courses could also be put in the schedule. And then we have students that struggle. And for our students that struggle, we can offer, again, additional supports, but we can also offer courses in which our students will be able to take courses during the day to make up credits in which they failed classes. Also for staff, the increased learning time, a 7-period day will allow us to embed our professional learning communities during the school day. Currently, our staff meets before school on Wednesday, so from 7 to 8 o'clock Wednesday mornings, or after school from 2:50 to 3:50. Because of the constraints of the 6-period day. However, a 7-period day will allow us to add an additional planning period for our teachers, and will allow us to cluster teachers according to the content that they teach in order for them to plan and work together. And that second bullet, to support curriculum alignment, which is also a part of our strategic plan, adjustment of our curriculum based upon the different students that come to our school, as well as planning and as well as outreach to our parents in order to communicate better with our parents about how well our students are performing in their classes. Also, this is an opportunity for us to grow and improve academic programming. I just heard Superintendent Unowski and Director Ashme talk about our market share. And so we definitely want to make Richfield High School a much more attractive high school and provide more flexibility and choice within the student's day. But we also want to expand and diversify our elective offerings. And we have so much room to grow in languages. We have room to grow with our DECA curriculum, art, as well as music, and offer different courses that our students themselves would like to see in the schedule in order to diversify what we're offering at the high school level. Again, we're talking about dual credit offerings with embedded supports. And so right now, we have college courses, AP courses, CIS courses. However, a couple of months ago, we reported out on the results of how our students are performing on our AP exams. And we're not pleased at how well our students are performing. We want 2s to go to 3s, 3s to go to 4s, and 4s to go to 5s, and for our students to actually walk into the University of Minnesota with college credit in these AP courses. So the 7-period day will allow us the structure in which to support those students who are taking those dual enrollment courses to get support during the day from licensed staff to excel in those courses. Not only our high-flying students will get that support, again, our students, we have a huge opportunity at Richfield to support the middle students that are not really being supported as well as they could be right now, and optimize and maximize their support to prep them to take those college-ready courses, and again, to allow them to take those college-ready courses and do well in them. As well as, again, our lower-performing students to get them on target for grade level and ensure that they are on track to graduate on time so we can hit that 95% graduation rate and beyond. Also, we would like to embed social, emotional, and college readiness supports within the day. And when we talk about socio-emotional support, we are talking about mental health awareness supports that we can provide during the day, different groups around those things. We have GLOW that we offer during the school day that would continue. We also have an opportunity to have specific groups targeted for specific subgroups that we need to target in our building to ensure that they are academically excelling. And college readiness support, if we truly believe that all kids should go to college or be prepared for secondary education, what supports are we embedding during the day outside of advisory to ensure that happens? And so that structure would provide those supports as well. Finally, We would like to excel and provide equity and access in academic opportunity to our students. A 7-period day will allow us to eliminate the 0 hour. We know that by offering a class during the 0 hour, we are limiting the students. It is a 7th hour for our students. It is offered during the 0 hour or before school because students cannot get that particular course in their schedule during the day. However, there is interest there. And so we could eliminate the 0 hour and ensure that all students can have that 7th course. Because right now what we have is, for example, Shay, she's a Spartan singer, and she has a 0 hour course, but she is able to take that course because she has reliable transportation to get here every morning. All of our students don't have reliable transportation to get here every morning, and that is an equity issue. Also, we can ensure that our rigorous courses, our AP, CIS, and honors courses, truly reflect the demographics of our school. And right now, they do not. And it's very apparent to me as I walk down the hallways and I look into classrooms. It's very obvious to me our accelerated and our advanced courses, and it's very obvious to me as to what our regular courses are. And believe it or not, as I have conversations with students, it's obvious to them as well. So we need to do a better job of ensuring that our courses proportionally reflect our student demographics. And we realize 2 things. We realize that there is a broken system that's creating this divide within our high school. And number 2, we know that we need to fix it. And so right now we have 4 equity team members here. We got Kim, we got Dr. Nikki, we got Dave, and we have Eric Paulson here, and they're all on the equity team. We have a meeting tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. And we are dealing with these type of issues, like what systems are in place to create these problems, and how do we demystify, for example, honors, and open it up to all students and ensure that they're all successful. And also, lastly, we want to ensure that we're preparing all students for success beyond RHS. We know that this is a very competitive and global market, and we need to be very competitive in our thinking and how we provide programming for our students to be prepared for life beyond Richfield High School. I come from a school in which we moved from a 6-period day to a 7-period day. And so I wanted to share what our multiple measures ratings looked like before we went to a 7-period day. When we were at a 6-period day, our MMR rating was at a 46.95. You see that we weren't even hitting the graduation rate, and we had much work to do around proficiency. This was during the 2011-12 school year. However, after 3 years of implementation, during the 2013-14 school year, our MMR rating went to 91.85%. And we were able to change outcomes for children because of the structure and what we did with that time during the day.
Okay, I'm going to step in for just a second because I know Principal Daniels isn't going to do that. Director Clayson, can you slide up 3 slides for a second and show our current reality again? Right there. And so I want to we're going to do a little bounce back and forth for a second here. So I want to point out where our current reality is, which is around an MMR of 51%, and that has to do with our overall school proficiency, growth, achievement gap reduction, and graduation. Now I want us to go down, and Patrick Henry is a school in North Minneapolis with about 90% students of color, 90% free and reduced lunch, and their MMR rating is 91.85%. So 3 years of Principal Daniels, moving from a 6-period day to a 7-period day under her leadership with some other things that were implemented. We have a school that went from 46.9 with 90% free and reduced, 90% students of color to over a 90% MMR rating. So the reason I wanted to bounce us back and forth is because I think it's important to both acknowledge where we are, but also know very clearly where we are going as Richfield Public Schools. And that bar graph on the right is where Richfield High School is planning to go and will be going within the future.
Absolutely. So in doing my research, I looked around and found additional high schools that were on 7-period day schedules, Holy Angels, St. Louis Park, Chanhassen, Chaska, and all MPS high schools this year went to a 7-period day. I know that Holy Angels, Chanhassen, and Chaska, their student demographics don't look like ours. And however, that is not an excuse for me or for the Richfield High School staff. I believe that though their demographics don't look like ours, we can rival schools that don't look like us and put our best foot forward and do exceptionally well for students here at Richfield High School. Next slide. In presenting this proposal to our staff, there were some questions that are yet to be answered that I don't have the answers to, that actually won't be answered until this is possibly approved and we move forward. And some of those questions are, how will this impact class sizes? How will this impact graduation requirements? What will be the start times of the high school, end times of the high school? How will this impact the teacher contract language? If approved, when can implementation begin? And will all teachers teach 5 classes per day? Again, I don't have the answers to these questions, and definitely if approved and when approved, these are things that we will have to look into at that time. And I'm a keep it real kind of person, and so I just want to be very real and be very honest and say a 7-period day will require us to extend our school day. A 7-period day will impact district transportation, and a 7-period day is more expensive than a 6-period day. However, those students sitting across this room, as well as the other 1,000+ students that attend Richfield High School, they're worth every dime of it. In closing, by the end of this presentation, I wanted you all to understand our current academic reality, and I also wanted you all to understand how the 7-period day structure can help support us in accelerated achievement for students here at Richfield High School. And I have to say this, that, you know, Richfield is a one high school town, and we want to ensure that we are providing the best high school, not only for these students, but also for the Richfield community. And so as I close this presentation, I hope I've presented a compelling proposal as to what we can do as a high school with very willing staff. The staff is very willing. They are ready to go. And we have 4 people who came out to sacrifice this evening because they are ready to go. But with willing staff, with awesome students, again, leadership, what our reality is right now, that is not where the period is. The period is, see me 5 years from now and see where this high school would be if we have that 7-period day structure to accelerate achievement for students. Are there any questions?
Questions for Ms. Daniels?
Can you elaborate a little, maybe give an example or a picture of what the embedded supports would look like for both the dual credit and the college readiness?
Absolutely. So, as Superintendent Yanowski shared, Patrick Henry is a school with 90% poverty, 90% students of color. However, we had a very aggressive goal to push as many students as possible into dual enrollment courses. And we did that understanding that this is one of my beliefs, that we cannot control what happens outside the school day for students. Understand that 40% of that population were Hmong students, and Hmong students at that time, they had additional responsibilities outside of school. And so we use the 7-period day structure to, for example, accelerate and push students into college readiness courses, but also offer courses that were AVID-like to support students to be successful in those courses. So the student may take, for example, CIS writing. If a student, for example, had 2 college prep courses, that student received support from licensed staff to be successful in those courses. So they would have a class in their in their schedule each day to get on-the-spot support from licensed teachers or licensed counselors in the building to help support them to be exceptionally strong in those courses. Because not only did we want them in those courses, we wanted them to do well in those courses.
So giving a little bit more detail to that, even a student schedule. So in a 6-period day, every student needs to take language arts, science, social studies, and math. And so then to get all of the electives and options and requirements from the state of Minnesota, most of those other classes are specific requirements from the state of Minnesota. So you might have PE, you might have health, you might have art, you might have music, and those rotate through as you complete the graduation requirements. If you have 7 periods, a student can have language arts, science, social studies, and math. They could take a second language arts class. So similar to what our middle school is right now doing, some of our students have a tiered second language arts class to help them A, succeed in language arts, or to help them accelerate, and in this case, stay on par with the college credit classes. So a student who couldn't succeed on their own in a 1-hour college credit language arts class may have college in the school's language arts and College in the Schools support language arts. And so they have 2 hours with 2 licensed teachers or the same licensed teacher twice, supporting their ability to maintain pace with that college credit class. Without
Thank you
that,
for
we
saying that
can't
better
provide.
than me. Thank you.
Differently.
So beyond the college aspect, I really appreciated the comment about life beyond Richfield High School and not just college. So do you see this opening up opportunities for students that are heading on a different pathway than college?
Absolutely. There is an opportunity. When I look at our current offerings, I see an opportunity for us to have an early college model here in which, sure, students can leave here with proper planning, with an associate's degree, if we plan this properly, in partnership with Normandale, and maybe in partnership with some technical college. But it requires that we work through that. But sure, it's wide open. It's wide open.
And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that I think when we say the word college, often people envision a 4-year university experience. And I think when we're talking about college, it's important to acknowledge that the main group of students need some form of degree or some form of training and experience beyond the high school to have the greatest opportunities for their future. And so we have that partnership with Hennepin Technical College already. We do some work with Dunwoody. We also have people like our partners at Richfield Bloomington Honda who are beginning to work with us to talk about auto technology-based courses. And so as we think about how we have our students go to college, we can say, how do students get credits for education beyond high school that can prepare them for college and career? And some of those go different pathways, and we have the ability to build those. And that is also what we're working on with this model.
Did I answer your question, Christine?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the terminology can trip you up because we really are putting CTE, or career and technical education, on an equal footing, or perhaps on an equal footing with traditional 4-year college prep, but recognizing that that's a pathway which also would be enhanced with additional opportunity. Yeah,
Correct. Thank you.
yeah. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Tim?
So it was alluded to that there's expected to be higher costs. Do we have a ballpark?
Yes. So AP Paulson, Assistant Principal Paulson, did math for us, and looking at where we currently are right now, if we went to classrooms with 1,100 students and a class size of 32 students, we're looking at roughly $250,000 more to move to a 7-period day. And if we went to a class size of 30, it would be around $500,000 more.
So
30, yes, from 32 to 30, yes.
And I've got it calculated real-world experience at about $750,000 is my best guess, based on how our class sizes are across the high school. So the couple of things that we would need to figure out are, how do we come up with that money? One would have to do with prioritization, which involves reductions in certain areas to create higher priorities in this particular area. The other way, as the funding comes with students, is to increase class sizes to accommodate this particular model. And so as we think about what are our top priorities and we begin the conversations around strategic planning and what are the things that we value most, one of the things that this board is going to be challenged with, and this is very deliberately being presented today with very deliberately no request for action whatsoever, just information and conversation, is what will be those top priorities for us to fund, because we've talked a lot about opportunity cost over the last year, and the opportunity cost is that if we do determine to fund one of our higher priority areas, which is a 7-period day, which would significantly improve the high school, we need to have a conversation, a difficult conversation, around what will that opportunity cost be and where will we make those funds up.
Do we have a sense of how many of the action items within the strategic plan are actually affected by this, right? So one would want to believe that retention of students from the district who seek educational opportunities elsewhere would be affected by it, right? So just looking at where we are from 14-15, there are 384 high school students from Richfield seeking high school outside of Richfield, either in another public, a charter, or private school. So, understanding the funding that follows each student, how many of those would we realistically have to capture to have it pay for itself? or close to it. Nothing pays for itself.
Well, somewhere in the 100 range. But obviously, that is a pretty significant roll of the dice. I mean, obviously, we create projections. We want our projections to be as accurate as possible. What we can do in terms of planning is, and this is the challenge of the high school team sitting here and also Principal Daniels, is begin a larger conversation to really get the details hashed out. So one of the things we'll talk about is what would the start times look like? Because as our transportation system is reliant on one another, for us to go down this road, which would also possibly include expanding the hours of the high school day, that would obviously impact transportation and start time at our elementary and middle schools. And so that becomes a larger systemic conversation. And again, now, how far are we willing to go? And then we also, as this process gets details played out, we need to engage our community in how much are we willing to go down the road to improve our high school. As I've watched in neighboring districts, the idea of moving a start time can be a very challenging thing for a school board and a superintendent, and certainly something I would not enter us into lightly. And so that's why we begin with those conversations now, and we begin going down that road of we need to figure out a way to commit to this improvement, and then we need to figure out how we go down that road in a way that systemically supports it across our district.
Would the class actual period be shortened in any way?
Yes, currently we have, typically if you look at those neighboring high schools that have 7-period days, as well as the previous school I left, we went to a 50-minute class period. And so currently our class periods are 56 minutes, and so they would probably go down to 50 minutes, and we would probably have to add 20 to 25 minutes to the day to accommodate a 7th period and passing time.
Jordy, did I see that you had a question?
I do have a question. So hypothetically, if we are going to expand the day for these future high schoolers, would you implement a less amount of work?
Great question, Jordy. So, but the question is valid. And interestingly, I was in a class today doing an observation, and students had to read an article and report out on the stressors of high school students. And so one of the stressors of high school students, of course, is social media, but we won't talk about social media. Another stressor is, homework and how much time students invest in homework, yet they don't see the increase in their GPAs. So moving to a 7-period day, again, when I use this word, supports during the day. And we talk about, controlling what happens during a student's day versus outside of a student's day. There is opportunity in a 7-period day for students who are loaded with rigorous courses to have time during the day to work on homework and get support with that homework. So the answer is yes.
All right, because, we need sleep.
Right.
Right. Yeah. There's also ways that the adults can better organize and systemically structure homework. As a former middle school principal, we had an agreement amongst our middle school team that math would be a daily homework, and that other courses would stagger their homework on a schedule. And so each curricular area had an agreed upon day where their homework was applied. It creates a large system of teamwork. The teams have to communicate effectively, but what it does is it allows our teachers to have a more structured system of homework collection grading, and it also allows our students to have a clear knowledge along with their parents of, Tuesday is social studies day, Wednesday is science day, I should expect that to come home. I see my teachers smiling and shaking their heads going, maybe that just might work. And so some things for us to look at long term about how do we support student work more effectively systemically.
So it's not just a 16% increase in homework.
Well, for Jordy, absolutely, but for the other 1,000+ students, we'll figure out some more effective ways.
Like that.
I mean, it's a cliche, between we wouldn't be making this change just to work harder. We would be aiming to work smarter. And, that's where we're going to see the gains without burning our students out and burning our faculty out and kind of flaming out the whole process. Other questions? I think that the next piece for us to consider then, as a board, as Mr. Yanowski was clear, this is a first hearing that we've had for this proposal, this presentation. I think we need to be thinking then about how we need to move this forward and what sort of information we're going to be needing to be gathered by our leadership team in order to have a comprehensive discussion and understanding of, all of the pros and cons of making a move like this.
From a board and administrative perspective, it's important for us to understand that as we move towards the budget for the next school year, we begin those conversations. We're beginning those conversations and planning, frankly, now to a budget that's presented to the board in February. We actually don't have the assumptions as to whether or not I, as the superintendent, would recommend us going to a 7-period day next year. And until I have more information in regard to the finances, I would be challenged to go down that road. Just as we think about an anticipated $750,000, give or take, and then also knowing that we had a slight reduction in enrollment this year, and we obviously are looking forward with the concierge Crossroads apartments with a reduction in enrollment next year, we would have to do some pretty significant prioritization. And what I can assure you as a board is that we will be doing that and looking at this as one of our larger strategic plan necessities. And if not, we're going to longer term need to find some more creative ways to fund things that within our district we're going to need to do to be as competitive and high performing as humanly possible.
So thinking about timelines in our fiscal planning calendar, if I'm recalling correctly, we should be getting our where we are in enrollment report in December. Is that correct, Bernice? Second meeting in December? Okay. So second meeting in December, we'll be getting our enrollment projections for 15-16 and taking a look at that. Fiscal planning meets in December? Yeah. Or in January, perhaps, if we can actually provide FPAC with that information.
They'll meet in both months.
Yeah.
December and January.
Yeah, but as far as actually having the enrollment projections and starting to put some meat on the bones of this budget.
Yes, although I want to be very clear in the role of FPAC as an advisory board in regard to what our role is as administration and as the board's role. So FPAC, I look at as a team that examines our financial practices and recommends what are safe, sound, and effective financial practices. What we aren't leaning on FPAC to do is create recommendations in terms of our priorities. And so the challenge for us as a team and as a leadership team of this organization is to try to align what are the highest priorities of our organization, what are the things we are going to allocate our funds towards, and where are we accepting challenges to say we're willing and able to reduce funds towards to make sure our top priorities are funded.
So thinking about it realistically, would we be wanting to revisit this issue in January?
I think it's appropriate for us to probably around December 21st have this as a conversation piece at our next board, thinking about it in the meanwhile to determine if this is something we want to take a significant look at, knowing that we will be obviously very impacted by our enrollment projections, which will help guide our finance projections. And honestly, I wish I had greater information for you other than the foreshadowing of I'm a little nervous with, again, those apartments and the reduction in students being likely in the projections. It will be hard for us to find significant amounts of resources to make a big change without impacting some programs very significantly. So I can assure you I'll put it back in the superintendent report for next conversation. I may or may not have Principal Daniels come back for that conversation, but she'll certainly be ready to share information, and I will also, in regard to where we are financially from Chief Holge, and then a conversation around what are some of those priorities that we really want to focus on.
So it's fair to say that Principal Daniels has presented to us a case that is demonstrating the academic merits of the 7-period day, and we've heard from Principal Daniels that there's support among our faculty at the high school. Now we need to balance those other pieces.
And Ms. Daniels and her team will be working on some of those unanswered questions to also guide some of those recommendations, because I think until we note the impact on other possible start times and those overall systemic transportation pieces and the staffing pieces, until we have details down to the granular level, we obviously wouldn't be able to go forward with a recommendation for a timeline. I think that conceptually what I'm hoping for in December is, does this board support this idea and moving it forward? Obviously, academic merit-wise, it's, to me at least, as a superintendent, it's pretty obvious. But from a financial perspective, we're going to really need to consider, or you all as a board are going to need to consider, how much are we willing to bite off in terms of pushing towards this specific academic piece, which will help us lead to those outcomes we're all looking for, and what is our time frame for implementation. All right, so we are going to now transition on into a conversation about gifted and talented and talent development within our school system, with a specific focus on elementary schools, but also an overview of secondary programming. And Director Clayson will be presenting, and she and I will go back and forth on a couple of slides, talking together about some of the things we are working to do, with a specific focus on improving our identification system and model for gifted and talented services, and then also working to begin improvement of our services, of integrated services and gifted and talented services, to try to get ourselves more in line with our neighboring districts and what are considered to be the best practices in gifted and talented services. So, Ms. Clayson.
Good evening, Chair Tenson, members of the board, student representatives, and the Richfield community. Thank you for this opportunity to impart some information about our K-12 talent development and advanced academics program. I need a microphone. I have teacher voice. Here we go. Can you hear me? Okay. Is it on? As we are in our second year of implementing integrated services, and as we continue to go down this road, this is just kind of an idea of you to get a better understanding how all of our students are valued members of our schools. They are valued members of a classroom community as well. A support service, no matter what the support is, should replace core instruction only rarely. And so what we want to ensure is that our students are receiving an education that is very tightly aligned to core at all of our grade levels. And the success of our students actually relies on the interconnectedness and the interdependence of all of its services. I'm really glad to have followed Principal Daniel's presentation because I'm a voice for K-12 talent development and advanced academics. And this is the goal that we've got, that we are ensuring outstanding performance by graduation from high school, opening doors for life beyond high school graduation. We need high levels of rigor and challenge to challenge every one of our students at a level where each of them will accelerate. This means teachers who are trained to challenge all of our students every moment of every day, and that all of Richfield Public Schools programs should be about talent development. Students develop their talents, and many different talents at many different times during their years. And we need to be able to recognize and nurture all of those talents whenever they present themselves. Minnesota is a state that mandates gifted services, but this is, they mandate it, but they don't really fund it really super well. The state provides $12 per pupil unit for talent development. Now, I'm not complaining right now because there was a time not too distant past where there was a scare where it was all going away. So I will take that $12 per student and also know that our district obviously dedicates many resources as well. But we need to juxtaposition this 55.9 with what we actually have as a budget for our EL students and our title students and our compensatory budget and our achievement and integration budget. Those together total $9.1 million for our students who need those services. We have approximately 4,300 students in our district. So the 55.9 is not nearly enough to be able to provide what it is that we need, but at least it is something that we've got.
So as we talk through that a little bit more specifically, because I want to leave it on that slide for a second to look at the $55,900, which basically involves assessment and screening for all of our students. It actually supports almost no funding of staffing of gifted or extensions. So as we think about ways like referendum that we utilize our dollars to add college in the schools classes and AP classes, which frankly often have 5 kids, 10 kids, 12 kids. Some of them have 30 kids in them, but we are doing a lot of subsidizing of that 55-9. In our middle school, we have a gifted specialist and also offer additional courses in honors math and extending the curriculum. And then we also have at least a half-time gifted specialist in each of our buildings, with more at STEM proportional to the amount of staff. And so we are working to supplement that 55-9. But again, talking about the $9.1 million. So if you think about just the additional funds, a gifted child within our district brings in $12 per pupil. An ELL student who is living in poverty brings in more like $3,500 additional per student. And as a board, we're aware of general fund dollars, which are funding every student, and referendum dollars, which fund every student. But Title I and compensatory education are for students living in poverty. ELL funds are for students speaking a second language in their home, and integration dollars are integrating students of color with Caucasian students. And so we have multiple pots of funding up to $3,500 to serve one student, while there is $12 to serve another student. And so we need to find creative ways to support that programming to continue to challenge our students at the utmost level.
I want to make a clarification on the term talent development. A lot of you know the term gifted and talented education. There's about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, there has been a lot more focus, kind of like what I said a little bit previously, of developing talent. It's more of a growth mindset. That if we provide the support and the services for our students, there are amazing things that our students have in them right now that sometimes don't manifest themselves in ways where they might for somebody else who comes completely ready, school ready every day. And so, although you kind of hear the terms interchangeably, talent development really embodies what the potential is for all of our students. And so that's why you're seeing this on the slide, on our slides quite a bit. So the talent development program, the direction that we're moving right now, especially in the area of identification and service model, more tightly aligns with our neighboring districts. We do have districts near us who have a school within school models for highly gifted students. That also comes with very high entrance criteria and a large onus on the family for outside testing, things like that. Edina has a Young Scholars program for first grade, as well as District 196. The students aren't formally identified, but it's more of a talent development program where they're able to participate in programs that align more to their interests and help grow them. So it's something that we could definitely look to in the future.
So as we look at, back one slide please, as we look at the areas we're working to improve, one has to do with identification, and we are trying to implement a more systemic identification model that more utilizes the data from our assessments to identify our students and ensures all students identified are served. And we are adding students when we have the FTE and capacity to do that, even acknowledging the small amount of funds that we have in that area. The other piece has to do with the service model where we're trying to improve. And each of our neighboring districts is already aligning their services to the core. And so the main function of most of our neighboring districts has to do with expanding services on the top end with regard to reading and math, with small amounts of additional areas and enrichments often happening outside of the school day, which is significantly different from what we have been implementing in the past.
Currently in Richfield Public Schools, the official identification is in second grade when, after a universal screener in first grade using the Naglieri Nonverbal Abilities Test, students are then referred to take a full battery of the Cognitive Abilities Test, or the COGAT. As you can see, and well, maybe you can't see it from this slide, but there are I'll go straight there. So this is 15-16. You go across right now, and we already have students who have been formally identified as gifted and talented, and yet our our official identification system doesn't begin until second grade. They haven't taken any test yet. So one of the things that we are doing is we are trying to tighten up and add some and bring some consistency across the district. So this year we are moving to a universal screener in second grade. The letters are going home this week. We are moving to the cognitive abilities test universal screener in second grade, the COGAT 7. One of the reasons that this screener was chosen was the absolutely endless research base behind it. It is a screener that doesn't require any English reading skills. It uses numerical and pictorial analogies. It also provides for test administration in Spanish, which will be wonderful for the students in our district, especially I'm thinking at RDLS. It is an indicator of general reasoning ability, which is good for all content areas. So it's not focused on reading and English reading, I will say, or math, but more of a general reasoning ability, much like the NNAT was. And then we will also be looking at other data points. So in first grade, we had very few data points from which to look. We had the NNAT, but we didn't have a lot more than that. And since no student is a single data point, we have to look at multiple data in order to really find out what our students know, understand, and are able to do. So we will be looking at the measures of academic progress in reading and in math. We are taking a look at all of this data, not to exclude students, but to bring as many students into our servicing as possible. In talent development in general, there has been students who have been historically underrepresented in gifted ed and talent development, including English language learners and students living in poverty. And it is work that I've done for years and years with this actual frame in mind to be able to service students much more equitably.
Excuse me, Thea? Yeah. On that slide, did I hear that correctly? Is everyone in grade 2 sort of been identified ahead of the usual identification process? Is that accurate? Nearly everyone?
Well, you can see that RDLS has 0.
Sure.
And that is because they have chosen to run it the way it...
So the short answer is yes.
Okay.
So basically, the COGAT screener is occurring later this fall or early winter. And so those identified students have been identified based on performance in the classroom. And one of the reasons that school districts go away from identification in this way in kindergarten, first grade, and early second grade is those tend to favor students who have been taught school at home. And so students who come into school knowing their numbers, letters, letter sounds, which frankly tend to be families not living in poverty, which in the state of Minnesota tend to be Caucasian families, which tend to be students who are speaking English as their first language. These students know school. And so they tend to get identified in kindergarten and first grade because they come in ahead of their peers. It has nothing to do necessarily with COGAT score or general reasoning ability or general intellectual ability. Much of this has to do with early success in school, for which we should be differentiating for, but that is definitely different than a gifted identification screener. The other piece in those regards, and I want to accentuate something that Tia said, is that students aren't identified in reading and math. And so as we think about, because many of you have had students within Richfield Public Schools, gifted services are not identified for a student is gifted in math, and gifted services are not identified based on a screener that a student is gifted in reading. Now, when we do our multiple data points and we determine who is defined as gifted and accelerating their achievement in one of those areas, we tend to serve them in those areas. But giftedness as an identification is not noted by subject area. And that's one of the core understandings of the conversation, because we haven't been necessarily doing it in that same way. Performance is high in those areas, but giftedness is a general overall ability-based screen from the COGAT and other data points.
And one other comment is, Is it fair to say that parts of this slide suggest we've had a very inconsistent practice of identification? I mean, Sheridan is 50-60% the size of STEM, but the numbers are roughly the same. Sheridan's roughly the same size as Centennial. The numbers are.
So the reason for us going after identification first is absolutely, there are areas where tests have been utilized, there are areas where tests have not, there are areas where data has been maintained, there are areas where data has not. There are areas where multiple data points have included MAP. There are areas where MAP has not been included. There are areas where classroom recommendations have been utilized, and there are areas where they have been not. So as we work to clean up the identification system, the first piece is to give everyone, there's no choose in, there is no choose out factor unless people don't want to participate, the same screener, regardless of family of origin and regardless of parent request. One of the ways that students historically across the state have been eliminated from gifted services is by creating a scenario that parents have to fill out paperwork. And if parents have to request an assessment, then parents who don't read at home, who don't speak English at home, are thereby eliminated from receiving the services. And so all students will receive that. And then we'll be working with our gifted and talented specialists, our instructional coach, and Ms. Clayson over the December, or ideally, December through February timeline, give or take, to determine what are those multiple measures. We will use those same multiple measures in every school, and they'll be applied uniformly across schools, so a gifted student or a gifted identified cutoff or input mechanism will be the same at Sheridan, which hasn't been the same in the past. I mean, as I can see from our students, they may have experienced this personally, or they are certainly understanding the situation that I'm describing.
And that'd be great. No, I mean, just because a kid's coming from a Spanish-speaking country doesn't mean they're less proficient in anything. And that's great.
Right, it's just more likely that they are not proficient in reading in their first couple of years in school in the English language, and that doesn't necessarily relate to giftedness in any way, shape, or form.
How would the universal identifier, so that sounds like a lot of effort focused on second grade, so how would that affect someone who's not identified second grade in subsequent years?
So a system will be in place because I am a firm believer in that sometimes, your brain, your synapses come together, right? And we will have a process in place whereby students, if teachers or family members or, and not just teachers, but family members or multiple teachers are seeing students really starting to, I don't want to say the light bulb's coming on, but the light bulb's kind of coming on, that we will have a process whereby they'll be taking an assessment as well. We'll be taking a look at multiple data points and making sure that our students are able to get the challenge that they need.
Thanks.
So as long as we're looking at the details of the identification, I'll ask this question. You're very confident in the capacity of COGAT to be a equitable screen map, the math assessments, are we as confident in their capacity to be equitable?
Well,
So no.
so no. I yes and no, and I'll use RDLS as an example. So they start taking the map in second grade, but they've been instructed in Spanish the entire time leading up to that. So for students in that school especially, I think that the reading measure, the measure of academic progress in reading for them, that's not going to be a huge help. So math is a little bit different, but again, we have a lot of students for whom English is not their first language. We have, through no fault of anyone, we have some assessments that require a lot of English language reading, and so we need to be able to find ways to develop and nurture the talent of our students when their true talent is hidden behind a language that is not their first.
Yeah. So I guess, Mr. Powell, with respect to Mr. Pauls' question regarding, and you give us some answer, I think that, that'll be something we'll be looking for more details on how we'll be identifying children beyond that sort of universal screen step in second grade. And yeah.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I do want to say, because there in these numbers as well, there have students who have been identified by our current system who are not being serviced. So, I also believe that you can't ungift, so our students need to be serviced. Here are the secondary numbers. If you take a look at grades 6, 7, and 8, I do want to point out that most of those numbers encompass the honors math configuration that we have. There is also a gifted and talented elective, which is one class at each grade level for students who have scored high in science and reading and math, and it's kind of an integrated class of inquiry, kind of project-based classes. At high school, these numbers reflect college prep courses, our honors courses, our AP, CIS, and PSEO, which is a traditional model at the high school to provide the challenge for our students.
So talking very briefly, that number jumps in 6th grade because of the acceleration that occurs in mathematics. And it's important to point out that subject areas are very different. And so while students may be ahead in multiple subjects, math is one of the few areas that a teacher actually, specifically at the elementary level, is not able to differentiate. And so, well, you've all probably gotten tired of me telling my daughter stories as a proud parent. My daughter is in a class of 32 students in Minneapolis Public Schools as a 5th grade student. She is in the 2nd highest reading level. She's reading 2 levels above grade level. So she's currently reading at a 7th grade level. There are students in her class, a group of 4 of them, who are reading at a higher level than she is and have deeper comprehension. And they are all being challenged within their current academic levels in a differentiated classroom in her current environment. From a math perspective, when we hit the middle school level, it's much more difficult, and so that's why we begin differentiating classes and have offered honors for our 6th grade or an accelerated expanded math, a higher curriculum at a higher level.
So if you take a look at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 opportunities for students, it's kind of like a diamond. All right, so when you have the response to intervention model that we've all heard of and has been around for a really long time, we think of that triangle where you have your 80% at the bottom, and then you have your another 15% here, and that 5% that needs really specialized services. But if you turn it into a diamond shape, you have the core in the middle. And 80 to 90% of a student's needs should be met in core instruction in the general education classroom. But as you move further away on either end of it, so you have another 10% or so, or whatever. I know I saw you. I'm not the math person. But they need something more. Okay, at both ends of the spectrum. Okay, so that differentiation, that acceleration of pace, or that depth of complexity, like Superintendent Unowski is talking about. I live in the land of reading and literacy standards. And so as you read my standards, the standards themselves do not change from kindergarten to grade 12. The depth and complexity of the standards and what they are asking the students to know, understand, and be able to do change quite considerably from grade level to grade level. And so as you're talking about accelerating students, you can talk about that depth and complexity, you can talk about that acceleration of pace, but it's still paralleling the core curriculum. And then you get to that very small group that needs something much further. And those are students that are off the charts. And they could be accelerated in subject. So right now, you might have a 2nd grader who's so advanced in math that he's actually, that we're actually taking a look at putting him in a 3rd grade math class. That would be very appropriate placement for that child. And in some cases, you would talk about whole grade acceleration. That is something that is very unique. It doesn't happen very often. At the middle school level, we talk about more of a depth of complexity within the core classes. Math is something different, just because of the nature of the way of math. And then you're also talking about dual enrollment and even early graduation from high school. Cluster classrooms. Integrated services aligned to elementary cluster classrooms. So students who are high performing, high potential, high achieving, they need to be with students like them during the school day. To have them isolated is not good. So one of the best ways that we can do it, especially with the resources that we have, and research backs this up, is to cluster students in classrooms where you are narrowing, and I'm trying to do this holding a microphone, where you're narrowing the continuum of the services that need to be differentiated by the teacher. It is not tracking, because you're not putting all the good smart kids in one class and all of the special needs students in another class. But you are keeping those really high students together, and then you're narrowing that continuum of differentiation services. They need to be with each other. The teachers in the clustered classroom need to have had training and or a high interest in teaching advanced students. I will say from personal experience that sometimes I've had a lot of students in my classrooms that have come through my classroom who are a whole lot smarter than me. And if I didn't embrace that as a teacher, it would have been really hard to teach them. But I personally loved it, and they taught me a thing or two all the time. Teachers are supported in challenging our advanced students through our talent development specialists and instructional coaches on ongoing work. We've got good support systems at the building level, and if we utilize our specialists, we utilize the experts in the building, we'll get a lot further. Have them work with the teachers.
And so within each of our buildings, we have that gifted specialist, half-time or greater, but we also have instructional coaches. And as you think back to the beginning of our school year, instruction is the main focus of our year and our work with teachers. And so as we look to expanding curriculum in the future, because that obviously also consists of significant financial impact, as we think about 7-period day, as we think about some of the things we want to continue to fund and support, next year we have decided and are working on as revising and improving our curriculum and some of the work that we're doing. So right now what we're doing with our teachers is working with our instructional coaches to expand their instruction and improve that and align some of their work more effectively to standards to expand it. But instruction is our focus, and we're working on the instructional component of that throughout this year.
One thing that our integrated services within a cluster classroom at an elementary level, and I wanted to show what it doesn't mean as well as what it does mean. It does not mean the end of specialized services. It does not mean the end of movement in and out of a classroom when that movement is appropriate. It does mean greater collaboration and tight alignment to standards. If we're moving our kids out and in all the time, we have to make sure that we are not creating any holes in their foundation. And it also does provide for enrichment offerings before and after school for all interested students, and whole school enrichment during the school day. Our services aligned to core in middle and high school provide opportunities and pathways for advanced learning in areas of strength and in interest. You can accelerate through the standards. We want our students better prepared. This is it. We want our students better prepared at every level for the next level. So we're preparing our students in elementary for success in middle school. What those 5th graders are going to be, exposed to when they get in 6th grade, and all of a sudden they're in honors math classes, which have a high degree of accelerated pace. And then when they're going from 8th grade to 9th grade, and then when they're from 12th grade, they're still ours. When they leave us, they're still ours. And how have we prepared them for life without us? Differentiation of tasks and materials, and integration of curriculum and ideas, projects and products, opportunities to explore areas of interest, and the scaffolded support where needed. These students, all of our students need to grow. All of our students need to grow. All of our students deserve a year's growth in a year's time, no matter where they're at. And sometimes with our highest achieving students, we find that there is stagnation in their growth, and sometimes there's even regression in their growth, and we can't have that happen. And I think that is everything for me. Do you have questions?
So questions for Ms. Clayson?
I think down the road, I'd be interested in hearing more specifics about how, we touched on this, but about how we identify students after that 2nd grade level, like what we watch for. Do we watch MCA scores, or what things do we look at?
And so right now, that conversation is absolutely in development. And so we want to start with the COGAT, but we haven't really We are working right now with and we obviously have a transition within our gifted and talented staffing, but we are working to create that systemic identification. And so we'll absolutely bring that to the board once the conversation is over and developed.
It's already, I've already been thinking about it, though. There's a lot out there.
So the only other thing I've thought of is, so I've had kids in the program, I've been in the district for a long time, and if you don't have kids in GT, you tend to not really know anything about it or what's going on. So this is really great to have this information getting out there, but I think we need to maybe go one step further and make sure that we are getting something out to parents when kids start school about what this is, what the program is, and what's offered, so that everybody knows, even if your child isn't one of the kids in it.
Completely agreed. And as we continue to work with our marketing and communication tools, one of the things I've tasked Ms. Clayson with is developing a flyer in regard to describing gifted services, the identification process, and then also the services that we're able to provide.
Is it possible to graduate early?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
What?
So just mathematically, Mr. Chavez, you'll appreciate this because I've done the math, right? There are 6 classes right now in a day, 12 in a year, then with 2 semesters. You could have 48 credits if you didn't do summer school or 0 hour, right? Mm-hmm. You actually need 43 to graduate. So an adventurous, aggressive youth like yourself could go to summer school, could take a 0 hour, which some students do, and you could actually have an entire semester at the end where you graduated at the end in the middle of your year by just earning 1 extra credit as a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader or a first half of the year 12th grader, and you could start college early, sir.
See, I wish somebody would have told me this like 4 years ago.
Jordy, we would not have a ceremony for you.
Dang. Like freshman year.
So you would only, but David, you would actually only need 1 extra credit. However, it's challenging because you need a full year in language arts, and you need a full year in science, and you need a full year in social studies. So you actually would have to do some doubling up, and it would take some very strategic planning, which typically is not how our early high school students work. However, I bet you could pull that off if you start thinking about it right now before second semester. I think so. I have faith in you, Mr. Munoz.
But we'd still like you to hang around the whole time.
That's right. We're going to
Don't
keep
leave
you,
us early.
we will keep you as a member of the board regardless.
Stick around.
Right. A technical question on the funding piece, even though at $12 per pupil, we realize it's not a big piece. Is that $12 per pupil dependent upon district identification, so whomever we identified, or is this dependent
It's
upon?
multiplied by the
No.
total number of students in the
Per
district. So as we
pupil.
go up, it's $12 per additional student, and as we go down, it's $12 per reduced
So
student.
it's $12 per pupil across the board. It has nothing to do with how many students we identify or don't identify.
Not related. Nope.
Got it. And another just sort of detail point, you were referencing, when you were talking about our neighbors, referencing that there are some neighboring districts who have a school within a school concept. Am I correct in understanding that that's a contrast to the integrated services model as far as a very different approach?
Yes, it
Yes.
is. So most of the couple of districts that do that, Bloomington has a school within a school, and Minnetonka has the Navigator program. So they have what I would call a more typical integrated services gifted program, and then the additional program. So the Minnetonka Navigator, and one of my daughter's friends is in that program, you need a 98% and above cutoff score from the ability assessment. You need math and reading scores that are frankly in the 95th and above in terms of achievement within school. I think you spend half a day in the school to make sure that you socially fit in effectively to the school, and there's also another rigorous part of that screening process to be part of the Navigator program.
So really a very exclusive type of an admissions criteria process as opposed to the inclusive model that we're looking at.
Yes, actually, one of them requires outside testing, and that's the parent's responsibility.
Right. Other questions? So again, I want to reflect on this being our first hearing of a public conversation on, I think, what's a very important topic. Superintendent Nowski, what was your vision on how we would be potentially moving forward with further conversation?
So we are working our way through the screening process regardless. Identifying our students in a systemic way that doesn't eliminate students is already clear oversight. I think the board has given clear oversight in terms of removing processes that are inefficient and ineffective and inappropriate. So creating a process where every student is screened and utilized for services. I believe, unless I am redirected, I believe that that's the guidance that I've received. Finding ways to serve more students more effectively, which is done through more effective integration and differentiated instruction across the curriculum. And then aligning our services through integrated services to the core. And so that will be the longer piece of that process. And so as we continue on, we'll be able to report back what is the exact screening process identified so that we actually have a clear system across the district. And as we continue to refine and improve our programs, we can bring back, certainly prior to next year, either the end of this school year or early in the fall, a conversation on how we have continued to evolve and improve our gifted services to move towards something similar to what the high-performing districts around us are implementing in their districts.
So in terms of direct feedback from the board, since this is not necessarily an action item, nor does it necessarily require board action, what is the administration looking for from the board as far as the feedback?
At present, so we are sharing the information about the process we're moving towards as a strategic plan action item. Because there isn't significant financial tails to it at this time, one of the things we need to have a conversation long-term about as we think about priorities is to truly serve our gifted students. We need to think about, if you look back to the wording of the strategic plan, it's expand talent development in our elementary programs. We need to really think about our funding, because as we have 56,000 roughly to serve, we're already serving more. And yet, to be able to differentiate effectively across, we both need to have coaching continue on in our buildings. That has a financial tail to it. We need gifted and talented specialists within our buildings, and we need to expand instruction. Right now, a half-time gifted specialist at our schools is obviously very challenging to implement this model, and to implement something rigorous that connects to the core. And even at STEM, where we have almost a full-time staff person dedicated to this, it's similarly challenging to do that. So one of the larger strategic planning conversations, and again, this isn't for a vote, this is for now to plant in that conversation for us. Here we have another program that we need to improve. We can improve some of the things without a financial connection to it, but honestly, for us to truly have a high-performing, challenging program across our curriculum in gifted and talented, we're going to need to think about an investment area and examine what would it actually take to challenge our actually identified students in all curricular areas more effectively.
So we would be, I think, looking for feedback from board members in terms of just sort of overall guidance on priorities. I think we've seen from Ms. Clayton's presentation the alignment between the integrated services model and our strategic plan, and a number of the priorities that and strategies that we've outlined as being sort of our top strategies there.
And as we continue to look at those top strategies and begin to investigate the tails, right? So if we do a systemic screening and evaluation of all of our students to determine what our actual gifted numbers are, it will more effectively give us an analysis of what do we really need to staff it at. And so then as we move to December, January, and we begin to have our conversations around, and now I'll contrast two things, right? GT staffing, 7-period day, instructional coaching to support differentiation. We really need to have conversations as a school board and superintendent around what are those top priorities, because part of the joy and the challenge conceptually of a strategic plan is it identifies our priorities only to a certain point, and then it's for us to guide what are the top pieces within there to get the highest level achievement for our kids.
Other questions? So I think for clarity, we would be anticipating, as we flesh out more budgetarily, looking at the 7-period day, we would also be fleshing out budgetarily, looking at these other transitions and sort of, as you sort of described those as the tails of the change. And so that would be the clarity that would be
correct.
Probably at our second meeting in December.
We'll begin further down that road. So when we get the budgetary information, we have our projections, we have a better idea of what our finances are, we begin to realize the opportunity cost of the choices we want to make. And so we're going to really begin to have a nuts and bolts conversation around where does our funding go and what are truly our top priorities, because those are going to be the areas that we're able to fund and perhaps expand funding in, and there are areas that might not be our top priorities that we would have to reduce funding in or eliminate funding in. And as all of our programs are highly important, it begins to become a very difficult conversation, and that's in our future.
All right. So thank you very much for a detailed and extensive presentation. And I would thank Principal Daniels, but she's here. Oh, she is here. Yes, Tanya, you've wrote it out with us. So thank you. Thank you very much for an extensive presentation. We will move on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. If there is any questions on the consent agenda from board members, we can entertain them now. Otherwise, a motion would be appropriate.
I so move we pass the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, motion by Ashmead and second by Paulus. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, the motion carries. We have no old business for this evening. We'll move on to new business, item 1, which is the credit enhancement application and resolution. I will welcome Ms. Bernice Humnick.
Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. I want to take this opportunity to discuss the 2006 bond refunding and the credit enhancement application. Recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the resolution to refinance a portion of the 2006 B Series General Obligation Alt Facility Bonds and authorize Ehlers and Associates as our financial consultant for the sale of the General Obligation Alt Facilities Refunding Bonds Series 2016A. The resolution includes the following: school district credit enhancement application and a resolution approving the sale of the General Obligation Alt Facilities Refunding Bonds Series 2016A. The background: Ehlers and Associates have notified the district of an opportunity to refund a portion of the 2006 B Series Alt Facilities bonds. The potential savings net of expenses is approximately $600,000. A copy of the resolution and pre-sale report have been included in your packet. The refunding bond bid opening is scheduled for December 21st, 2015. Gary Olson, who's present this evening from Ehlers, will be present at that meeting to discuss the bid results. Should the bids results not produce the desired savings, the school board has the opportunity to reject the bid. Just to highlight, the opportunity to refund the 2006 B Series Alt Facilities bonds are currently at $5.3 million. The purpose is to reduce the amount paid by the taxpayers. There's no additional funding for the district. It's actually to reduce the taxpayers' portion. The new issue is estimated to be at $4.75 million with a projected interest rate of 4%. There is an anticipated underwriter's premium. So basically, they'll pay you more than the premium par value of the bonds. So that's where the significant savings will come through. Underwriter premium combined with the lower interest rates present an opportunity for the district to save taxpayers an estimated $600,000. The bonds are scheduled to be sold on December 21st and close on January 13th.
So questions for Ms. Humnick? I will reflect on this in my own, using an analogy that I can understand. This is essentially like refinancing debt, that we have an opportunity to refinance debt at a better rate and save long-term on the debt obligation. Is that about right, Gary?
That's correct. If you remember 2013, 2 years ago, we did the exact same thing with an earlier set of bonds. And almost all school bonds over time are going to be refunded. When you sell bonds, you set a call date as a provision of that bond. Typically, the first 10 years you can't call, and so those were the years up to 2016. The bonds payable after that are available to be refunded, and that call date is 2/1/16 for February of 16. And once you get within 90 days of that, you can do what's called a current refunding, which is a much simpler process, less involved and less costly. So this is your opportunity to take advantage of that current refunding process.
So long story short, for a really simple mathematical person, we can refinance our debt and potentially save our taxpayers $600,000.
Yes.
Cool.
Is it the case that the premium is paid because the current bond environment is terrible and that our interest rate's high enough? Is that it, or?
Basically, yes, that's correct. What's happening is the investors want a rate that's higher than what the real rate that you should be paying is. And because some of these bonds aren't going to mature till 2025, and they're wondering what's going to happen to interest rates between now and then. So they're willing to pay a little bit more than the par amount. In other words, for a $5,000 bond, they're willing to pay more than $5,000 to get that principal up. Even though the coupon rates on your bonds are at 4%, the net interest rate that you really pay after you take into account the premium is much less than that.
So this represents an opportunity to save the taxpayers nearly $600,000. Are there any other questions for our financial experts prior to looking at the resolution?
Just to clarify the point, if on the 21st, if we don't like the bids, we can back out. Is that correct? I mean, if we don't get enough subscribers or purchasers or?
Absolutely. It's up to you now. In all honesty, what we try and do is we will continue to monitor the market between now and then. And if it looks like the savings is going to be significantly reduced, what we would probably do is call you, let you contact the business office, let them know that this has been reduced, and we'd rather than take the bids if we think it's something you're not going to like. It's better from the underwriter's point of view to just postpone the sale or delay the sale, as opposed to bringing bids here that would be rejected. Okay. We try and avoid that, but like I say, what we'll do is continue to monitor the market between now and December 21st, and if something drastic happens, we'll certainly let you know.
Okay. And just for clarity, the ultimate payoff date of the current debt wouldn't change under this arrangement? It totally paid off, and is it 2025?
Correct.
Whether
we're not extending.
Whether we engage in this or not?
Yeah, we're not extending the debt. The principal payments are in the exact same years. They're just going to be $100,000 and some each year less.
We can entertain a motion if any board member is so inclined.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
So a motion by Paulus and seconded by Malik that we authorize Ellers to look for bids. Any discussion? If not, Mr. Paulus?
Aye.
Mr. Ashby?
Aye.
Ms. Malik?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, the resolution carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, donations, and I'm going to pick up the speed of my talking so our students can't utilize me as an excuse to be late to their first period classes.
Oh, we'll
So
still use it.
Since I am on the agenda for the last couple things, so we have quite a few donations. An anonymous donation to Richfield High School received 2 anonymous donations to the Spartan Food Shelf, totaling $140. Craig Lundeen, Richfield High School, received a donation for academic and educational programs in the amount of $240. Richfield Bloomington Credit Union. Richfield High School received a $4,000 donation from RBCU to purchase student spirit wear t-shirts for homecoming and our homecoming parade. Stacy Smith, Richfield STEM Elementary, received $100 from Stacy and Alina employee dollars for doers. Patrick Stone, Richfield STEM Elementary, received $349.99 from Patrick and Wells Fargo Employee Contributions and Match Program. Antonia Stroth, Richfield STEM Elementary, received $130 from Antonia and Wells Fargo Employee Contributions and Match Program. And Michelle Peterson, Richfield STEM Elementary, received $130 from Michelle and Wells Fargo Employee Contributions and Match Program.
Very generous donations. We can entertain a motion to accept with gratitude.
So move, we accept, or approve the donations.
Second.
So, put that under duress. Christine, I was kind of looking away. So motion by Ashby, second by Malik, that we accept these donations with gratitude. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion is approved. We will move on to the advanced planning section. Legislative update, Mr. Yanowski.
So brief legislative update as we are looking at achievement integration. Currently, the state is looking at changing the integration and incentive integration rules. They haven't made any final proposals, but we are monitoring that very closely as they're looking at possibly going to a special session. As an integration district, we'll have to monitor closely to make sure the impact on our programming and our funding for students. Additionally, it's important to note the Higher Learning Commission. If you recall, in the Sun Current and Star Tribune, there were challenges to college in the schools based on the Higher Learning Commission's recommendation to ensure that, to remain accredited, that all teachers of college in the schools needed to have a master's within the content. Through some very aggressive work with our lobbying group and also down at the legislature, I'm proud to present that that has been postponed for at least 5 more years, so that college in the schools implementation or accreditation changes have been suggested as postponed till at least 2022. So let's hear it for the legislative process.
Outstanding. The other piece that we had received some notice from AMSD about at a federal level, the reauthorization of NCLB is coming up, and a bipartisan effort has come together to really reform that law. At this point, it has received favorable review from sort of the educational professionals, I guess, as in big letters. And so that's something for us to keep an eye on. To me, the key piece of that was a shifting back to state to remove federal control over accountability and to put that back in the hands of the states. And I think that's probably the most important piece that would have the biggest impact on Richfield. I'm sure this is a piece of legislation that's thousands of pages long, so there could be details there that we're not aware of, but this is just something on the federal landscape. Did you have any other points?
It does maintain many of the accountability system pieces, but has a more statewide accountability system. But as I have learned, I don't any longer count chickens before they've hatched, and so until bills have actually passed, knowing how they tend to get caught in legislature and in Congress, obviously we'll be watching very closely, and I will wait to report prior to actually coming back with information until it's actually passed, because even though it's gotten those reviews, oftentimes those get challenged in committees and on the floors. So
Something to be aware of. Future meeting dates, I'm going to skip down just a bit, and then we'll move back up to letter item B. Future meeting dates, we do have our first meeting in December on the 7th. That is the first Monday of December. That will be our regular meeting here in the district boardroom at 7 o'clock. That is the Truth and Taxation meeting for our annually statutorily required meeting. Also on the 21st of December, our second regular meeting in December, that is also at 7 o'clock here in the district boardroom. I will ask if there are particular items of information or questions that board members wish to share in preparation for those meetings. And then we can entertain any suggested agenda items in planning for those meetings. I think one thing that has come up is, as mentioned, we will be looking forward to our enrollment report at the December 21st meeting, and also starting to put some details around our budgeting for the future year and some of these initiatives that we've, instructional initiatives that we've discussed this evening. And December 21st, I think, is the time that we would be really looking at that in detail.
we'd be truly beginning that process and beginning to go down the road. We won't have full budget there, but we'll begin to truly engage deeper in that conversation and really start that look at a hard look at our priorities.
Yeah. So I think that from a policy perspective, if there is feedback from members of our community that we need to entertain between now and then, that reach out to your members of this board individually, or we can also look at whether we need to have any type of opportunity for feedback to come in public forum if that's necessary. Other agenda items? If not, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion by Paula, second by Ashmi, that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.